Hello, everybody, and welcome to another PowerPlate education series. I'm your co-host today, Jeremy Danielle, here with PowerPlate. I have Tom Hemmings here from Sea Island, and today we are talking about designing warm-up routines like a pro. Today, you will learn all you need to know about designing a warm-up routine and how it influences performance, recovery, and injury prevention. Before we get started, what I'd like to do is just give some quick introductions for those of you who are new to PowerPlate. And to let you know a little bit more about PowerPlate, I'd like to start off with where we came from. Our brand roots actually began as rocket science, helping cosmonauts as they return from outer space reverse bone loss and muscle atrophy. And as we took this out of this world start, we brought it forward to create our brand promise, which is to create a total body health and fitness solution that enhances every movement you do. It enhances and optimizes all movement and recovery for all people at any ability, stage, and walk of life. PowerPlate simply accelerates results. Also at PowerPlate, we have a business support team. This team is made up of the three people you see here, Gary, myself, and Mindy. And we are three real people with lots of experience, with lots of care about helping you find the right solution to meet whatever training or recovery needs that your facility and your company needs to grow. Also today, we are brought in partnership with the Club Spa and Fitness Association, which is the only national association for fitness, spa, and wellness professionals in the private club sector, bringing community through education, professional development, and research. For people who want to get more plugged in, the opportunities in there are virtual conferences, webinars such as this one, regional roundtables, white papers, and other networking events scattered throughout the year. So that is the Club Spa and Fitness Association, and I definitely recommend checking them out and getting plugged in if you have not. Today, I want to introduce our speaker, Mr. Tom Hemmings. Tom is a former college athlete and a current golf fitness specialist at the world famous Sea Island Company. He's worked in the fitness industry for over a decade. He has a master's degree in exercise physiology, and he's worked in everything from corporate fitness and luxury private clubs to professional sports teams in the UK and the United States. He works with amateur and junior golfers all the way up to college and pros to improve performance and prevent injury. He has experience with the PGA Tour, the Corn Ferry Tour, the European Tour, the LPGA, the Smetra Tour, as well as collegiate and junior level players. Tom's focus is working with PGA Tour players throughout the year for programming to help them get better with their competition. So without further ado, I will hand the mic over to Tom, and we shall begin learning about how to design warm-up routines from the man himself. Take it away, Tom.
Jeremy, thank you for that kind information. Thank you for having me, all of you at PowerPlate, and thanks for joining us today. As Jeremy mentioned, I'm here to talk about the importance of a warm-up routine, and obviously just like a little bit more of the technicalities that may go into a more specified routine when we're looking at that aspect. I think that a lot of the time it's really easy to just kind of brush over a warm-up, especially when you consider something as a sport as golf, as a lot of people play it as a recreational sport and don't dedicate the time to warm up the body optimally. So, I think it's really important to dive in what your specific needs are, and obviously have a well-rounded approach to that to optimize your performance. So, first off, what is a warm-up? A warm-up is a really, really important aspect of the first phase of when you go into your programming. I think that a lot of times that if you go in to see a trainer and you'll get in and you'll start to do your dynamic routine. You may start to do a cardiovascular warm-up that may be on a treadmill or a bike, depending on what you're capable of doing. In here, you can see behind me, we have a room that obviously suits us to about 2 to 3 people per trainer maximally. So we'll optimize this space to do dynamic movements specified for golf. But all of that really, really is specified to enhance neuromuscular efficiency, bring your cardiovascular systems to promote circulation in preparation for optimal performance. And obviously, if you think about injuries, and obviously, as Jeremy mentioned, to optimize or decrease the risk of injury. If you have some people, or you may be one person yourself that has an injury or a reoccurring injury, I think it's really, really important to highlight these areas in your warm-up. You may need to move, you may need to work around that, or you may need to do some exercise that help promote that. So, that enhances the readiness aspect. So I think that, if you come into the gym, you may have slept too long, or you coming in for an early session, you may be in more of a relaxed state. We're getting you to a relaxed state, to a ready state, ready to get going, ready to go to the gym and do a hard workout, or you're ready to go out to the course, and you're optimally ready both physically and psychologically. So from a performance aspect, for golf, for instance, if I look at why we use this as a warm up, the amount of muscles and joints that are utilized in a golf swing is, I like to use the word chaotic, because it really is. You think about how asymmetrical the golf swing is from one side to the other. You think about the hips, the way they rotate, the torso, the way it rotates, and basically every time you rotate into your backswing, you are performing one muscular movement on one side, and you are doing the complete opposite on the other side. So there's always going to be like a seesaw action in this motion. So it's really, really important to activate those prime movers that are important in your performance. So for golf, the powerhouses of the golf swing tend to be the glutes. That does not mean you do not need optimal rotational strength and power, because you do. So we try and make sure that we getting the strength and the activation in and around the core. You've got to look at the aspect from the glutes. You got to think about the stabilizers. So for some people that have diminished ankle mobility, we may need to enhance that within our program, but then work on how those stabilizers are then going to help them improve their stability, and obviously their prevention of swaying or sliding in the golf swing, because we're able to get a better force on the floor. So that's something, again, the stabilizers are very, very important. So as you can see on the slide, the performance aspect, the control, and obviously the injury prevention, I think that the mobility of each joint needs to be enhanced as well. This is a small segment of our overall or global approach, being the warm-up. So the warm-up is kind of piggybacks on what I give my clients to do daily, or my golfers to do daily. So in that way, they can make sure that it kind of becomes very repetitive, so they can get their movements down, so they know what restrictions they may have. And obviously, if they know that, they know exactly what they need to get into from a warm-up standpoint, if they know what the primary focuses are. And I will add that, if you have a golf instructor, you may be working with someone that is a golf fitness specialist or something like that, then I would encourage the relationship between the two, because that's where, if I have a golfer that comes in to see me this morning, I know that I'm preparing them to go and have a lesson. And if I know what they're going to go work on in their lesson, I can then obviously maybe encourage those pathways a little bit more, or I need to focus on a specific area to enhance that performance in that specific lesson. So they go hand in hand. I think that the gradual increase to the preparatory readiness or physical readiness is key, and that's where I'll explain that a little bit more when we go down the road in the warm-up. So prime movers, integrated system, stabilizing muscles. As you can see on the screen, I think the prime movers in the golf swing, as I've mentioned before, the glutes, the lats, the core. You got to think about the pushing muscles, the chest. I think that a lot of those prime movers don't really, I've got to be honest, strength and conditioning gets a pretty bad rep when it comes to prime movers. If you think about strength and conditioning, Jeremy, I know you're in that field heavily. I think that for instance, people look at a bench press, and you see people doing bench press all the time in terms of golf. And it's not the best exercise for a golfer. That you need to try and enhance those transverse planes. So we want to make sure we're nice and strong while rotating the thoracic region. So when you're doing a bench press, obviously it's more fixed. So that's where we try and encourage our golfers to be mobile while strong within their prime movers. So we can still do those pushes, the pulls, hinging from the hips. You can still do squats, lunges, etc. But we want to make sure we're doing it in a way or in a plane of motion that's going to enhance their performance. So if an amateur golfer came in and that was very novice to working out, I think that you must go back to what we learn as a personal trainer or a strength and conditioning specialist in how we build up that foundation. So we look at the planes of motion, so the sagittal plane, the frontal plane, the transverse plane. We would look at how we can train those muscles within those specific regions before we start to enhance that and make it more sport specific. So that's where the prime movers will, they will evolve over time. But from a corrective exercise standpoint, which is what I heavily work in, and what I use, predominantly with my golfers, because they're not working with pro athletes. It isn't just hard all the time. You've got to really assess their bodies and know what's going on consistently. And we always look at the stabilizers and how we integrate that into their overall system. And that's really, really important, because if you're not considering what's going on in everyday activity, some players may go away for 4 weeks or 5 weeks on the road, and they come back and they are completely zonked. They are tired, they're fatigued, both physically and psychologically. So, we always reassess as they come through the door, and we know what we're getting into at the start of the session. So then we can look at what's going on. Are there deficiencies in their movement pattern? Are we lacking certain stabilizers? And if so, how are we going to activate those stabilizing muscles to then be more a part of that integrated system? Because as we go to more of an advanced stage of those systems, we look at how your primary movers from your right side and your left side work together to allow like the sling systems to be able to be more efficient in rotational sports. So, in all, from an anatomy point of view, I think it's really important to consider joint by joint and how each joint then comes in to the overall picture of the golf swing. So design basics, I think that, thinking about the specificity of it, I think the person is the most important thing. I think if you don't understand your client beforehand, as I mentioned briefly, you're just given a cookie cutter exercise or a cookie cutter warm up specifically for the sport. So I think that when I look at designing a program, I really make sure that I have all of my ducks in a row for that person. I know what limitations they may have, and I may exclude some exercises for that specific person, or I may include, spend more time with that specific person to make sure we get exactly what they need. But I like to use, I know that there's 3 different phases, but I like to use, 4 to 5, possibly 6 different phases, depending on the person. So you make that as sport specific as you can, based on the individual needs or requirements. You then move into more of the activation. And obviously that's where the corrective exercise comes in. So you can split that off into more of a foam rolling inhibitory aspect, or you can use the power plate to help activate and obviously do some mobility and stretches on the specific piece of equipment that you desire. And obviously through that becomes, if you split up foam rolling, you're looking at obviously how that can inhibit some overactive areas. And obviously when you activate, then you're looking at waking up those underactive muscles. So there may be an imbalance in the body that you may need to address. You may need to take more of a restorative approach and activate those areas that may need just to be quote unquote woke up, to allow the movement to be enhanced. So that's where, I think that you can use, products and obviously different aspects within your warm up, but activations are probably, for me, one of the most important, based on that individual or person specific criteria. The mobilization, obviously, I think that from a speed standpoint and a power standpoint, if you don't have mobility in specific joints, i.e. the hips or your thoracic region, you're going to lack club head speed and you're going to lack distance. So, you're thinking about dynamic stretching, you're thinking about movement patterns that you can obviously perform towards the latter end of your warm up and making more movement specific exercises related to the movements within a golf swing. You can always add power exercise in there, for more of like a neurological stimulant. That's what I like to use towards the end of my warm up, because sometimes when you're doing the foam rolling or you're doing some stretches, sometimes that people don't really feel like they're quote unquote psychologically or amped up ready, which is why the PNF, the dynamic stretching, the mobility movements, the access to power movements, if it allows for the person to do it, will allow you to take it to that next stage. So there's plenty of ways to explore what works for you. I would first look at what person specific, what aspects you really want to attain to. If you've had an assessment, you could always look back at that and then try and think about how you can then divvy down the exercises into these different criteria that we have on the slide in front of you. Okay, so I've got a little map behind me. I'm just going to run you through a couple of exercises for each of the phases that we mentioned there. So if you have a foam roller, I don't want the whole warm up to be just foam rolling. I think a lot of times when you do that, people think, okay, am I really getting something out of this? The purpose of this is to prepare your body. You're not doing one thing and then you're leaving. You're doing this to prepare for the next phase of the warm up. So if you have a power plate, you can always use a power plate. We don't have one in this specific building. We have one in our other gym. You can always use a roller, or you can do the stretches on there as well. So from a golf standpoint, I'm just gonna really focus on. I'm just gonna give you 2 examples of each. So this one's gonna be thoracic. So thoracic rolling. You're gonna go ahead and hold your head. You're gonna pick up at the top with your hips, and we're just gonna basically cover the whole surface area of your thoracic region. So there's a couple of ways to advance this. You can work on a little bit more thoracic extension. So you can place it just in and around that lower part of your scapula. You can keep your core active, your glutes on the floor, and then you can start to work thoracic extension. And this is more of an advanced phase for the foam rolling, or the prep phase, as we would say. A lower body one would be more piriformis. So this is more of an external rotator, which typically gets pretty tight when people are going through follow through or into the backswing. So you cross one leg over the other leg. You're going to find that sensitive spot on the lateral posterior side of your hip, and you're just going to basically roll back and forth. On these motions, if you've got kind of a hot spot, some people refer to it search and destroy. You're going to kind of hold it for sort of 5 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds, and then you can carry on rolling. And I keep this to 30 seconds. You could go a little bit longer, but from a warm up, you want to make sure you maximize your time. So once you found the one spot, you can then 30 seconds and then move to the next side. So again, that's just 2 examples. You can always look at doing your inner thigh. A lot of times we'll find people that get very, very tight or restricted shoulders. So that's where you could use the roller on the lats, and then you can actually mobilize while you do the rolling technique. So that's where, we could spend 2 hours on this, but I want to make sure I condense it so we can see each phase. Okay. Hopefully we're all following so far. Please let me know otherwise, Jeremy. So just a couple of movement specifics. So I'm just going to work the shoulders. We're going to go for a shoulder flexion. So we're just going to go ahead and enhance your ability to flex at the shoulder, so that if there's any limitations at the pec or the lat, I'm just going to go through. Again, it's more of a mobility drill, trying to enhance your movement at that specific joint. As a progression, you can then stand and more an advanced phase in a setup posture, like you're getting ready to hit a golf ball. So it's kind of a mid-iron posture, and then we're bringing the arms up to the top. Again, we're just trying to get level with spinal line. So then that way we're able to enhance your ability at that shoulder. A lot of times when people do this, we see this happen, or they start to bend the elbow. That's where, if you find that there's a limitation, please feel free to go back to the floor, start on the exercise that I did at the floor there, because then gravity is going to start to assist you and you can stabilize your body on the floor there. So again, that's just a couple of examples. From a lower body standpoint, I really like to activate the pelvis. So it's really important to mobilize your pelvis by doing things like pelvic tilts. So this is more of a foundational phase, because I've got 4 points of contact on the floor and I'm able to take my pelvis through a full plane of motion, or full range of motion. When I get to a standing position, again, I'm in the setup posture and I'm able to perform that arch position in my back. and then the round in my back, arch position in my back, round in my back. And sometimes, you know, if you TPIers out there, certified with TPI, you sometimes see like a little shakiness. So that tells us that this is something the more you do it, the motor control or your motor efficiency is going to improve. So therefore you're going to get stronger at that specific motion. A lot of times people will say, well, that doesn't really occur at my golf swing. Well, it occurs at high speeds in your golf swing. So we need to make sure that we can do that functionally, especially in the warm up, because that occurs when you're going into your backswing and obviously your downswing when you're coming into impact. So you're kind of, you know, you're going into more of a posterior tilt and then an anterior tilt when you're coming into more of an extended position. Okay. So a couple of activation areas, just, you know, I know we haven't got a power plate, like I said before, but single leg bridges. I love the single leg bridge just from an activation standpoint. Hands above to you know, take a little bit of the support that you'd usually get off the side with the hands, and then you can go ahead and push up and back down. You can just really focus on driving through the heel and the big toe, and when you get at the top, to make sure that you're getting a good activation in the stance leg, you can give your thumb or the glute a little bit of a jab with the thumb to make sure that you can feel the area that's the focus area. Okay, so again, more of an activation there. Another activation, we can go ahead and do a T-spine drill and a reach. So it's kind of more of a mixture of mobility and stability, I guess, because you're going more stabilizing with the shoulder and then obviously mobilizing your T-spine. So it's going to be in that mobility phase as well, more of a step up towards movement specific. So then we consider what's going on with your T-spine and obviously challenge that reach back. So you can start to add in some different aspects from an external rotation standpoint as well. So as you get to the ladder stage, you can think about starting to do lateral motions that then obviously run parallel with what your golf swing would be. So obviously in the swing, you go into the backswing. As you come down, there's a weight transfer to the other side. So we can start adding in some side lunges and make it a little bit more dynamic with the balance. So obviously you're going from a weight transfer from left to right. Obviously you can then go to the other side. If you want to make that or take that to the next level, adding in a component of power, then obviously you can do more of a lateral hops, or like they call ice skaters. Once you get that one down, you can start to add in some T-spine rotation into that component as well. So that's where you can make it as specific as you want, but it goes back to that first part of, hey, how specific can we make it for that person? Does that person have any restrictions and any injuries? Because if someone had a knee issue, probably wouldn't want to get them to do that last one on the jumping. So again, always refer back to those limitations. So thinking about how we activate or mobilize, how we foam roll those two components. We activate, we then integrate everything together once we've activated some areas, i.e. the glute bridge. We get more specific with the motions, getting those prime movers working together as an integrated system. And then you start to really think about psychologically preparing your player, and then they're ready to go. So hopefully that explains a little bit more about the warm-ups that we do here.
Well, thank you, Tom. I found that very enjoyable, and I hope the rest of the people did as well. And now we want to throw the questions out for anyone who has a question. Feel free to type it into the Q&A that you can see down at the bottom. And we can have any questions you want answered now from Tom.
How you integrate in the power plate. So when I'm in the other facility, I would integrate it at either the start or the finish of the workout. From a warm-up phase, I would be using it when, like I said, either with the foam roller or doing some exercises actually on the power plate itself, i.e. like when you're bridging off of it, or when you're doing like a high plank to activate the core, or like a shoulder tap, so you're holding onto the power plate. I think that's just a great way to get everything activated, really give some extra stimulation, both neurologically and from a muscular standpoint as well. And in more workouts as well. Saw another one too.
We have a question from Vicky about the My 7 has these exercises. Which?
I'm not sure with the goal specific ones. Do you have those on there?
So for the 7 series plates, the My and the Pro 7, yes, we do, Vicky.
Yeah.
They have the integrated cables that retract with varying degrees of resistance to allow you to work on the rotational movements that Tom's displayed. And it's also the same plate, so you can have all the other vibration movements that you would normally do. A question from Joe: is there one specific exercise you would use for the power plate for a golf swing?
Golf swing. I would say that a lot of the times we get especially from an amateur level, I would say there's a lot of people that have an issue with pelvic tilting or lower back tightness. So anything that you can, for instance, like if you're on the power plate and you're doing a hip hinge or a toe touch, something that could enhance your ability to kind of like loosen off or, mobilize that lower body. I think that's a great one to do. I think just getting into that pelvic tilt and actually, or even you can always do the all fours tilt off the side of the power plate, and stimulate the body that way. I think that's a great one to do. The other one I do like to do is obviously getting into a setup posture, and you can kind of be side on with the handles of the power plate to the side, and you can obviously hold on to the side and start to rotate your pelvis into that side, or even just work on a stretch, because then that way you're actually stabilizing your lower body, mobilizing your upper. So you're starting to enhance that pathway in this type of integration. You can make that as dynamic as you want. I would do lower body stabilization where you lunge up to the power plate and back. There's plenty of options, but anything, I would really encourage you to focus on lower body flexibility, nail that one down, check your upper body flexibility, and see if you can mobilize those areas, and then we can start to think about integrating.
And Tom, for the last question that we have time for, what is the best exercise you recommend for painful knee joints? So let's make this specific to if you were warming up someone or designing a warm-up routine that has knee osteoarthritis or knee pain, what exercise or exercises would you recommend be a kind of paramount to their warm-up?
Yeah, I think that that goes back to how much knee flexion you can obviously withstand. I think that I would optimally like kind of remove that if I was you. So none of the side lunges or anything like that. I think the thing that to really think about doing is obviously thinking about activating your backside. So glutes, glute bridges, anything that you can do to activate your core. And then think about what's going on at the ankle as well. So thinking about how we can integrate those two, the joint above and then the joint below. And if you're obviously strengthening those areas to then kind of help protect that knee joint, you're not putting too much pressure on there. So I think that anything that's kind of like painful, I would avoid. But if you can work in those pain-free motions, you may be okay for a hip hinge, because you're still mobilizing your hips and using your hips. And if you're not deficient or restricted in that region, you may want to check out what's going on there before you start looking at what's going on at the knee as well. So I would encourage you to look at what's going on in this section. But definitely get the glutes firing, definitely work on some balance and activity for the ankles, and see how that goes with the knee.
All right. Well, I hope that sufficiently answered your question, Vicky, and that is all we have time for today. It is now 2 past the half hour. So I want to thank you, Tom, for your time. I want to thank everyone who came in today. I hope that everything was as enlightening as you hoped it would be, and you gained some useful knowledge from this. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to the team here at PowerPlate. We can also forward any questions you have to Tom directly to get more insights that you can get from him. And I hope that everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate you having me.